1 week away we are from the season opener for this 2024 season. Guys, Caleb and Seth back at you with episode 14 of Hawgs on the Hill, your go-to podcast for an in-depth dive into all things Arkansas Razorbacks. Join us as we dissect the victories, analyze the plays, and revel in the spirit of the Hawgs. As always, episode 14 is brought to you by Homefield. Step in the legacy of collegiate style with Homefield's premium vintage apparel. Embrace the spirit of their alma mater or even your favorite team with their meticulously crafted, comfortable, and stylish collections. Elevate your game day attire and celebrate the rich history of college sports. Homefield, where tradition meets modern comfort in every stitch. 15% off with the promo code Variety Sports. You still have some time to order your new Razorback shirt for the upcoming season before it gets here next Thursday. We are a week out, and it's hard to believe it's already here, yet there's a lot of optimism, a lot of skepticism, and just a lot going on in Razorback Nation as we get ready for the season opener just a week away down in Little Rock at War Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. The weather's changing a little bit here and there, which gets the football spirit in the air too. I know it's going to heat back up over the next couple of days, but today felt pretty nice. I think the high here was around like 84. It was 61 degrees this morning on my way to work, and that just screams football weather and makes you in the mood for it even more than normal. So, there's some games this coming up weekend, kind of week 0, if you will. But then things really ramp up next week. Week from today, there's some decent games that night, and then obviously that Saturday there's going to be some big time matchups. So a lot to be excited for. Definitely a lot to be excited for as a Hog fan, but a lot of things to prove. We've talked about it week in, week out. This could be an awesome year. This could be a disappointing year, and there's a lot of variables that are going to go into that, but it's going to be a fun ride kind of watching it play out, especially with some of the talent that's on this team, some of the talent that's in the coaching positions, i.e. Bobby Petrino. So this could be a fun year, and I'm definitely excited to get things going.
Yeah, I agree. It's like we were just talking about, there's a lot of things out there. If you look at a lot of Razorback media, there's a lot of optimism that, this team's going to have a good year. But, if you kind of look from the outside in, there's still some things that you got to consider. It is the first year under new coordinator head as far as offense. There's a lot of question marks as far as defense and the experience of, some of those position groups. I mean, the linebacker room that we talked about a few weeks ago is my main concern, but so you got to take everything, I guess, with a grain of salt. It's hard as a Razorback fan not to just, look at all these positive things, listen to the coaches' press conferences, and not get excited. But, I mean, I think that's just who we are as a fan base. But, there's some truth to it, to what level that is as far as comparing those expectations and the feedback you get there to, the rest of the SEC and other competition around the country is a little bit different. No doubt, I think this year's offense will be definitely much better than last year's. It would be hard to be worse than last year's offense, especially, just the way things went with.
Be careful what you say, but
that is true.
I definitely agree though.
But, I mean, when you think of it at the end of the day, Travis Williams had a press conference, I believe it was today or yesterday, where he's talking about, he's just excited how well this team has just gelled together, what Pittman's built here. And, I really hope that's the case. I really hope that's put on display this year. That defense kind of held the team in a lot of games last year, and hopefully they can have that continued success this year. Later in the show, we'll be breaking down the defensive backs room, which has the chance to be a strength on this defense as well. But, we'll jump into we got some more additional preseason awards that, Razorbacks have been named for. You just go down the list. Luke Haas, Mackey Award list, best tight end in the country. I could easily see him, if this offense goes the way we think it could, easily be up there for that award towards the end of the season. Landon Jackson, the Bednarik Award watch list. Eli Stein, the Patrick Manelli Award watch list. Landon Jackson also for the Lombardi Award watch list. And then you have Taylon Green for the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award watch list. So several Razorbacks getting on those early watch lists before we head into the season. But yeah, I mean, we're right here to it. And, there's a lot of excitement as, we're officially going to be under a week starting tomorrow.
Yeah, 1,000%. And the UAPB game, I think there needs to be an asterisk by that. I know we're like a 54-point favorite or something ungodly, which we could cover it. If I was a betting man, I would almost bet against us to cover that. That's a ridiculous spread. And from what I've heard, there is going to be intentional backup play as long as we do get a significant lead early on. They're going to try to play as many quarterbacks as possible. I'm sure we're going to try to get as many freshmen some reps as possible. Even if they redshirt later on, that's a great game experience. Kind of down there if you're able to get a big lead early and get some guys in the game early. But that could also inhibit covering the spread. So all you betting men out there, be cautious, I guess, on betting us to cover that. That's a crazy spread. But on the flip side of that, though, should be a good opportunity for us to see, what we have behind some of the starters, especially on like the offensive line, for example. What do your 2s and 3s look like? Is there a significant drop off in, run blocking, the way we're able to create holes, the way we're able to get push and get into, the defense's linebackers, if you will, from the offensive line and really open up holes for your running backs. I'm hoping that our first team is very good at that, but it'll be really good to see, some of the backups get in there and also be able to push guys around. We should be able to move the ball with ease, I would think. So definitely going to be a good first test to really prove, hey, we are significantly improved. We can move the ball all over the place against a team of this caliber. So hopefully it'll translate when you get into week 2 against a team that, in my opinion, could make the college football playoff. Are you able to compete and keep up? You're going to have to score points for sure. Obviously, your defense is going to have to do the best it can against a pretty stout offense in Oklahoma State, but you have to be able to score points along with that. So these first 2 weeks are going to be pretty wild right out the gate, in my opinion, just with the big spread against a lower name team. But it is in Little Rock, which we've seen crazy things happen there before. There's a lot of new faces on this team, so there's probably going to be a lot of jitters and things of that nature. So week 1 could be a big shock too. I don't think we're going to lose, but it could definitely be a closer game than a lot of people expect. Or we could score 70. It's just that's how this year feels, man. It's just such a big one way or the other. I don't think anything is a lock at all this year.
Yeah, I think for me, when going into the season, I was having this conversation the other day. I want to see Arkansas take care of business against the teams like UAPB that it needs to. Don't let them be close games. Come out and win pretty handily, if you will. Don't have it be a 28-7 game. Come out and put up 35, 42 points, and let your defense do their job and limit them to 7 to 14 points at most. But that's the thing, I thought we struggled with last year. We didn't take care of business against teams that we necessarily should have. We had teams hang around, especially I think BYU. That was a game we should have won that game, but then, kind of they got some momentum and we just couldn't do anything. Our offense couldn't function. That's kind of when you started to see the offensive line troubles bubble up, if you will.
Yeah, that was a writing on the wall type game for sure, where things did not pan out. We weren't able to sustain the offense late into that game. Once BYU figured out a couple of adjustments, they basically shut our offense down. Which that's something that we're going to have to do better on this year, being less predictable, being less one dimensional. And I think Bobby Petrino is the perfect guy for that. But at the same time, there's been a lot of things go around that, this team is going to look different on day 1 than it looks on, week 8, week 9, week 10, just due to the fact that they're still learning the playbook. It's going to probably be a fairly vanilla offense, I would imagine. Week 1, just as guys are, they're still getting certain plays down and perfected. We're going to run the plays we run best, but then they're probably going to try to save some stuff and not have too much film out there for week 2. So I'm excited to see exactly what the mix-up looks like from a play calling standpoint, how deep we go into the playbook. You want to practice some of the plays you don't do well in a game scenario against a team like UAPB where you can have success, but at the same time, you want to be, cautious about what you show, and then also run the plays you do run well and perfect those to where you can run them with your eyes closed, if you will. So it'll be a fun game to see where the offensive direction goes. How run heavy are we? How pass heavy are we? I could see it kind of going either way, depending on what position group needs the most reps. Yeah, obviously, I think there's going to be several quarterbacks play for sure. And so might have a few more passing opportunities just to try to get guys reps, whether we need to be passing the ball in that scenario or not. So it'll be kind of interesting to see the way the game flow goes. But overall, man, we have got to execute, like you said, against teams like this and really show that we have strength. We're not struggling to win against teams like this. There were so many games last year that just felt like a struggle to ever find any offensive consistency, even against bad teams like Mississippi State, for example. That was one of the worst games I've watched in my entire life, just as far as offensive consistency and rhythm goes. So you have to, come out and really use these types of games to get your rhythm, get your flow, because that truly does carry into the next week.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's one of those things like we talked about this game too, was it's in Little Rock and funky things always happen in Little Rock. And I think many Arkansas fans will agree with this statement that, they hate the, games being in Little Rock to begin with, but especially the season opener. To me, you want to see your season opener at home with all your fans kind of rallying, to that first game. But also I can see in a sense, if I don't know if they're thinking about it this way, but okay, let's have the first game here and kind of get it over with. That way we don't have to worry about kind of going down to Little Rock middle of the season and something like that,
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two sides of the coin, pros and cons for sure. I think this is a smart decision, having this game early. It's going to be hot, but with us getting this Thursday game, it got us moved to where it's a 6:30 p.m. kickoff, which is nice. That's a good thing. Plus, I think it really does provide an opportunity for us to get a lot more TV coverage, which could help in potential recruiting, things of that nature. There's going to be more eyes on this first game of the season just around the country. I mean, it's early football. Everybody's wanting to watch football no matter who the teams are. This is going to be kind of the primetime ESPN slot. So I think that's a good thing as far as getting more viewers and more publicity out there in a week one game where, this easily could have been an SEC plus 11 a.m. on a Saturday type game originally. So I think this was not a bad decision to go ahead and take that Thursday slot whenever it was an opportunity. Go ahead and get the Little Rock game out of the way against probably the easiest team on the schedule, to where if you do have some struggles due to it being in Little Rock or some struggles due to it being the first game, maybe it doesn't bite you from a record standpoint. You're still going to come away with a win most likely. So I have no problem getting it out of the gate, getting it over with. Hopefully, putting a better taste in the Little Rock area compared to how some games have gone there as of late. But the one thing I definitely want to hit on is I think the university is aware and conscious that, hey, we're not going to schedule big games in Little Rock anymore. Back in the early 2000s, the 90s, it wasn't a bad thing to do. There was more market for it. War Memorial was able to keep up a little bit better just from like a concession standpoint. Even that was one of the biggest talking points about last year. Like, this has got to stop. I mean, like, people weren't even able to get water. So that was a big issue. So hopefully that's corrected this year. But anyways, I think it's definitely smart to schedule non-conference lower tier opponents for the Little Rock game as long as it continues. And not the LSUs. The Miracle on Markham should not be a thing anymore. Those
I was about to say, I remember in college playing Georgia middle of the year down the Little Rock.
And that it's cool, but it's also terrible just in a lot of facets. So I have no problem with it being one of the earlier games of the year, even if it's a Thursday night, whatever the case may be. I would actually prefer that compared to it being a conference game later in the season where you half your crowd. So there goes part of your home field advantage. Obviously, there goes your home field advantage as far as the comfortability from your players playing on a familiar field. all those things. It's one more neutral site game in a sense. And we already have one of those every year in Texas A&M. So I don't know. I can definitely drink the Kool-Aid as far as getting this as early as possible against the weakest opponents possible, getting it out of the way. And hopefully, I know there's been stuff tossed around about it not being continued. I'm not sure what the confirmation is on that, but eventually down the line, I wouldn't be surprised if this game is no more.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is if they want to continue to have this game in Little Rock, they've got to make some renovations or updates to the stadium because,
1,000%.
you know, at this point, I almost feel nothing more than like a glorified high school stadium, if you will. Just with, back in the day, yeah, it was great for what it was. But now, I think that's part of, not only the fans going there, but even I would say the players not wanting to necessarily play there because I mean, your locker room is going to be not up to date. The field's probably not going to be that great. I think last I knew it was a turf field. So, like, what's the quality of that turf down there? Things like that. I know they still have high school games down there normally on Friday nights. So, you know, I think that's the big thing that, if Little Rock and that kind of group down there wants this game down there, which I don't have a problem necessarily with it staying down there, but, you've got to have your facilities and everything, to the best of the ability for people to want to come, especially like you mentioned. Like you can't for a big game, you can't just run out of water before the end of the game. That what happened last year. That's not
That's unacceptable.
That's unacceptable, especially with it being end of August where it is hot. People are needing water. That's just almost embarrassing.
Yeah, 1,000%. One of the biggest draws, in my opinion, in keeping it down there is the tailgating can be phenomenal on the golf course. There is good history there, if you will, which is a fun thing. And there's some cool traditions about having this game in Little Rock. But it needs, like you said, this game needs to keep up with the trajectory that SEC football programs are on as far as upgraded facilities, the works. This is one opportunity to draw in recruits, but you would lose recruits, in my opinion. Whereas if this was a gym to go play at, kind of similar to like going down and playing at Jerry's World, that's an awesome experience. There is certain recruits, from Texas that want to play at Arkansas that's one thing that they'd probably enjoy. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's some opportunity for this to be a draw for recruiting even, but there's got to be some upgrades down the line. I think that needs to be a focus if this game is going to stay around. We'll see. I've got mixed feelings on it, but enough about that.
Yeah. Before we move on here, so we talked about that is going to be a primetime slot game on ESPNU at 6:30. Some of the other bigger games going on that night as well as you have NC State taking on Western Carolina, who we played in Little Rock last season. As far as bigger ranked teams playing that night, you've got Missouri taking on Murray State. Surprisingly, 22nd ranked Kansas taking on Lindenwood. You've got a big matchup, even though it's not ranked. Colorado taking on North Dakota State, a game that people said don't necessarily overlook this game. As I think North Dakota State's excited about this matchup, and who knows, if that could be an upset week one. Other games throughout the slate, you've got Utah playing Southern Utah, and so there's going to be some good football to watch. But as far as like we said, Arkansas should be one of those bigger games that people should tune in and watch. As you're technically into week one now after you get past this week 0 this weekend. But with that, we'll transition over to some Arkansas basketball. As school's back in session, guys are back on campus, practices happening again, and we now know Arkansas' schedule is SEC slate has been announced as far as dates. We don't necessarily have times yet, but we do know dates. And then we also know some dates on other non-conference games that Arkansas will be involved in. So on December 10th, we knew they were going to play in Madison Square Garden in New York in the Jimmy V Classic, but it is officially now announced that it is going to be on December 10th. And then you have a big Thanksgiving Day game for Arkansas as they will be playing Illinois in Kansas City at the T-Mobile Center in Kansas City on Thanksgiving Day at 3 p.m. And as far as the SEC schedule, we'll just run down this real quick. January 4th, you open up conference play at Tennessee. Either January 7th or 8th, you will play Ole Miss. January 11th, Florida at home. January 14th or 15th at LSU. January 18th at Missouri. January 21st or 22nd, Georgia at home. January 25th, Oklahoma at home. Circle this one here, Arkansas fans. February 1st on the road, Cal returns to Rupp. That's going to be one of the bigger storylines in college basketball as we, get into the heart of conference play, and Cal returns to his former home in Kentucky. February 8th, Arkansas will have Alabama at home. February 4th or the 5th, they'll be on the road at Texas. February 11th or 12th, LSU at home. February 15th at Texas A&M. February 18th or 19th at Auburn. February 22nd, Missouri at home. February 25th or the 26th, Texas at home. March 1st at South Carolina. March 4th or 5th at Vanderbilt. And you round things out with on March 8th with Mississippi State at home. So, different conference feel as we hinted, you got Oklahoma and Texas sprinkled in there. But like I said, February 1st is the date you're going to want to circle as Cal makes his return to Rupp Arena.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's especially if we have a good record up to that point and they do as well. That's going to be a major, major matchup with a lot of implications. But it'd be fun to go. I'm not going to say pull off an upset because I'm hoping we might be the higher ranked team at the time, but I'll go in there and knock off Kentucky at their place. It would, as a Hog fan, just rub a little bit more salt into the Big Blue Nation wounds. Anyways, that's going to be a fun game. A lot of big implications. That's also my son Miles' first birthday, so that'll be a really fun day. But then outside of that, man, we have in my opinion, I feel like we have a very good home schedule. Quite a few good games that are going to be at home. It makes those season tickets even that much more valuable, in my opinion, because there's going to be some really good matchups at the Bud. And then, I mean, we've got to really give credit to this staff for hyping this team up, doing what they did, and pulling a lot of the players in. In my opinion, this could have been a down year, and I think it's got potential to be one of the best years we've seen in a couple of decades. So I've got the Kool-Aid flowing in my veins for this upcoming basketball season for sure. It's going to be an exciting season. Lot of hype, a lot of potential. It's very similar to football in the way that it could go not as well as we're all hoping, but it could also have such a high ceiling, that it's going to be a very exciting year. There's reasons why everybody's high on the Hogs right now. Obviously, a lot of the news coming around that we do have one of the best NIL situations in college basketball, if not the best NIL situation, however you want to phrase that. So that's another thing to be excited about. That's getting everybody amped up and getting some more national attention on the Hogs. But there's not enough words to say about how excited I think the state, all the fans, the players, the coaching staffs, everybody is ready for basketball season to be here just to see what this team's going to look like, how good this team can be, how good can we get quickly, and how much of an impact can we have early on in the SEC schedule, and then make a big push, late in the year. It's another thing kind of similar to the football team. Cal's been vocal that this team's probably going to look different in February, March timeframe compared to the early part of the season, because there's a lot of learning that's still going on and a lot of development between all these new faces. So I think it's going to be another fun ride, just like football has the potential to be. How good can this team improve throughout the season? That's one thing they're going to have to do. It's one thing I feel like our football team didn't do last year, and I'm hoping they do this year. So could be a lot of parallels between the football season and the basketball season. Hopefully, all in good ways.
Yeah, very, very well said there. I agree. I feel like for this basketball team too, you could say that you have a much higher ceiling, or not ceiling, but higher floor as far as,
That's
if
fair.
things don't necessarily go as well as expected, which I feel like expected is making a late, very deep dive into the tournament. But I mean, compared to last year, I think the floor for this year could be pretty high. Um, I mean, and speaking of that, one of it is, Trevor in Brazil was named a breakout player by John Rothstein. So, the accolades keep coming for some of these guys. We talked about last week how, Arkansas was one of 3 SEC schools that had multiple impact freshmen. So now you have TB coming back, and, I think everybody's ready to see what they thought he would have been last year if things didn't go the way they did. He didn't have the year everybody expected. And I think there's a little bit maybe getting back from injury, but also some discontent in the locker room, if you will, that caused some, maybe not as well as good of play as you thought you should have had.
Yeah, I'm hoping he comes out with a chip on his shoulder. I think from a game planning standpoint, he will be freed up to play how he wants to play and play to his strengths instead of being forced into a role that maybe he's not as good at or as natural with. So hopefully he can kind of get back to that explosive rim rocker, but then pull threes when he's open, drive and kick. I think there's some things that he's really, really good at just due to his athleticism. But he was having, I think the ask was more than he was capable of delivering last year, just with the way our roster was set up. So hoping that he has a better role and fits his role a little bit better in this offensive lineup that Cal's got put together here. I don't think he has to be the guy at all. He doesn't even have to be the 3rd or 4th option, in my opinion. So I'm curious to see how he's utilized. Is he a 6th man, maybe even? I would imagine he's going to be on the starting lineup, but I could also see some justification for, if you've got some pretty good chemistry with a different group of dudes, whenever one of those comes out, put Brazil in there and run some offense through him, kind of diversify things. I think he's got potential to be that caliber of a player. I don't know. So like we said, it's going to be an interesting season just to kind of see how all this shapes out with so many new faces. And the way they play week 1 could be very much different than the way they play once March comes around. So the evolution of this basketball team is going to be a very, very fun ride to watch. I'm excited for Coach Cal to really, put his imprint on this team. I don't think we're going to see as how good they can be until late in the season, which gets me excited. So,
yeah, I agree there. It's a lot of optimism. As we'll get updates, we'll keep you guys up to date. But as football season gets closer and we're a week away, basketball keeps inching closer as well. And so exciting times as we kind of get ramped back up into the sports world and get out of the dead period of summer, if you will. And we'll jump over to some Arkansas soccer as Arkansas got their season underway last Thursday as they took on John Brown. They come into the season opener ranked 16th, where Arkansas got the win in this one 7-1. And it took a minute for Arkansas's first goal, but to come, and that was the 10th minute of the game by Kylie Delaney. But after that, kind of the goal started flowing in for this Arkansas soccer team is Ava Tankersley, who is also the reigning SEC Forward of the Year, scored her first goal in the 40th minute of this match. Zoe Susie added to the Razorback lead after tapping in across from Taylor Behrman. With 3 seconds left in that first half, you had Kate Doyle getting the second half scoring started with her first goal with the assist from Tankersley. 3 minutes later, Tankersley scored her second goal of the match. Forward Macy Schultz also headed in across from Avery Wren in the 63rd minute of this match. And Arkansas's final goal came in the 89th minute of this match from Sabrina Jones off across from Tankersley. So this Arkansas soccer team's coming out fast and on a mission this season.
Yeah, 1,000%. That was kind of the MO of this team last year, is come out, score goals early. There were several matches where we would score in the first 2-3 minutes of a match, and kind of sometimes it would come in flurries. You'd score 2-3 goals within the first 20 minutes, which is something to be commended for sure. Just having that type of explosive capability and getting some of these matches out of reach early. This is a prime example of coming out and doing what you're expected to do against a team that is not as good as you. You definitely have the talent to sweet, kind of come away with a big win, if you will. And they did just that, which is a good thing to see, that you're able to kind of like we were talking about in the football side of things, come out and really handle your business against these lower tier teams. That's what's expected. And if you don't deliver that, it can be a sign of concern. Not always, but it can be a sign of concern if you're not able to come out and really handle the teams that you're expected to blow out, if you will. So this was a good win. Got everybody involved. Get some of the rust knocked off even more so. We had some exhibition matchups that we did well in as well, but this was a great matchup for us, leading us into what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, like Seth said, Arkansas moved up to number 9 in the rankings this week, and they are currently on the road, deadlocked 2-2 in a match versus number 8 Michigan State on the road. There is 5 minutes and about 5.5 minutes and counting left in this match, deadlocked at 2-2. So we'll see how this one ends here soon. But, Arkansas holding their own in a top 10 matchup that, looks like it could be coming down to the wire here.
That's all you can ask for, that you compete well against teams that are, at your caliber. Beat the teams you're supposed to, and then compete well against the teams that are as good as you. Don't make the mental errors, don't make any mistakes on the field, capitalize where you have good matchups and things like that. So I'm excited to see what the end of this one's going to shake out like. I've got a good feeling we might can pull it out. At the same time, if you do drop this game, it's not the end of the world. These are the ones where you really learn, who your team is, especially when you're kind of up against the wall or something like that on the road in a top 10 matchup. So a great early test in the season to really see what we're made of and then build off of, especially if you can pull out the victory.
Yeah, that's true. So, hopefully they, like we said, they get the win, but this is game 2 early in the season, a big ranked matchup. Not the worst thing in the world if you do happen to drop this game, but with about 4.5 minutes ticking down, like we said, we're deadlocked here. So hopefully they can pull it out here and find a way to get the win. And with that, we will get ready to jump over and dive into the big part of this show, as we're going to be talking Arkansas defensive backs. This could be, I think, one of the sneaky good, position groups on the team. We've talked about some of the ones that, we expect to be good, ones that we may expect to struggle. But I think this is one with, the hype that we've heard could be good for Arkansas. And, before we jump over there, with football being just a season or a week away, go out and grab you some Scarlet Letters for the game. Have those ready on tap for game day. You can go check those out, get those out anywhere, your local liquor store. If you're Northwest Arkansas, swing by Core Brewing, go check them out. Go check out, the scenery over there, and you can pick yourself up a 6-pack or 2 as you get ready for the game. But we will dive in here, the defensive back room for Arkansas, and we'll just run through the, like we've done in the past, we'll run through the guys on the roster here, and then we'll talk about the key guys that we think are going to play a big part in this season. So you got Keon Stewart, the transfer from TCU last season that came in. He's a 6 foot 184 redshirt senior. He played in 10 games for Arkansas last year, had 2 starts, 8 solo tackles, 2 assisted tackles. You got defensive back Selman Bridges, 6'2", 175 freshman, a 4-star recruit out of Texas, and the number 5 cornerback in the country. Defensive back Danico Slaughter, 6 foot 190, the senior transferring in from Tennessee, played in 10 games for Tennessee last year, 32 total tackles, 26 solo, had 11 tackles in their game against Georgia. Jaden Johnson, 6'2", 205 senior, started all 12 games for Arkansas last year, had 62 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 3 pass breakups, and 1 forced fumble. Jalen Braxton, 6 foot 190, sophomore, played in 9 games last season, 6 starts, 20 total tackles, 11 solo, 9 assisted, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, and 9 pass deflections, and was named to the freshman all SEC list. You have Marquise Robinson, the 6'1", 192 senior that transferred in from South Alabama. He played in 13 games for them last season, 36 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, and 1 fumble recovery. And a fun fact is he had an interception versus Oklahoma State last season when South Alabama went into Oklahoma State and got the upset victory. So all very familiar with our week 2 foe that he'll get to head back to Stillwater for the second season in a row. You have Jaheim Singletary, 6'2", 187, redshirt sophomore, the transfer that came in last season from Georgia. Played in 10 games for Arkansas last year, 4 starts, had 17 total tackles, 10 solo, a half a tackle for loss, and 4 pass breakups. You had Miguel Mitchell, 6'1", 222, a junior transferring in from Florida, played in 11 games for Florida, 8 starts, 37 total tackles, 19 solo, half a tackle for loss, 2 pass breakups, and 1 interception. You have Hudson Clark, Hud Island, returning for his seems like super senior year as a 6'2", 191 redshirt senior. Played in 12 games for Arkansas last year, started 10 of those, 51 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, 1 fumble recovery, half of a sack, and 1 interception. You have and was named first team academic All-American last year. Defensive back, you have TJ Metcalf, 6'1", 200 sophomore, played in 12 games for Arkansas last year, 15 total tackles and 1 fumble recovery. Dallas Young, 6', 196 redshirt freshman. No stats, redshirted last season. Tevis Metcalf, 5'10", 192 freshman, 3-star recruit out of Alabama, and is the brother of TJ that is we just mentioned. Anthony Switzer, 6', 220 redshirt senior out of Utah State, played in 12 games, 11 starts for them last season, 85 tackles, 3 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, 1 interception, and 1 fumble recovery. You have Christian Ford, 6', 184 redshirt freshman, redshirted last season. Akari Johnson, 5'11", 186 freshman, 3-star recruit out of Texas, and the number 21 athlete nationally last in the recruiting cycle. Jaden Allen, 5'10", 166 freshman, 3-star recruit out of Texas, and the number 58 cornerback nationally, Landon Phipps, 6', 184 redshirt sophomore, no action last season. Dylan Haas, Luke's brother, 5'11", 190 sophomore, played in 12 games on special teams last year. Jabray Shaw, 5'10", 190 redshirt freshman. He redshirted last season, no stats. Anton Pierce, 6'2", 209 redshirt freshman. He redshirted last year. Aiden McGowan, 5'10", 165, joined via open tryouts in spring of 2023. Braylon Watson, 6'2", 200 redshirt sophomore, no action last year. And finally, John Paul Pickens, 6', 186 redshirt sophomore, no game action last year. So Arkansas has got some depth there at defensive back. But kind of as we circle back around, the main guys you are going to be seeing this year, one of them being the young, bright, shining star that is Jalen Braxton, that really came on late in the year last year, had some big games early, but it was kind of still figuring things out. But, towards the end of the season, became one of the stars in that Razorback secondary.
Yeah, I think he definitely lived up to his recruiting hype, if you will. I'm excited to see if he's made a significant jump into his sophomore year. Even if he hasn't, as long as he plays as well as he did last year, we're going to be in good shape from him. And then, another guy you got to mention, Jaheim Singletary, had some bright spots last year, but I think if he can step up just a touch and play to the level that we all know he can, especially considering he was a 5-star recruit when he went into Georgia. If he can, kind of come into his own for us, that's another really, really solid piece in the cornerback position. Those 2 guys alone, can really wreak some havoc from a pass defense standpoint. Get another guy, I've got high hopes for. I'm not sure how much he'll play being a freshman, but I think he's got potential to come in and steal some playing time. Selman Bridges, 4-star recruit out of Texas, number 5 cornerback in the country as a freshman. Is he able to come in and kind of have a significant impact in his first year, very similar to how Jalen Braxton did? So there's just 3 guys alone that I'm excited to watch play, and that's not even mentioning, guys like Hudson Clark, TJ Metcalf, a couple of the other transfers. Danico Slaughter's got, in my mind, a lot of potential to chew up some playing time. there's a handful of others that could really work their way in there. Jaden Johnson's going to play quite a bit. So there's a lot of names and a decent amount of depth in my mind compared to, previous seasons. You'll be able to keep a lot of these guys fresh later in games and later into the season than I think we've had the luxury of in previous years, which is a good thing, definitely a good thing. And I think it'll help, let some of these guys play to their strengths, so they're not having to play in a position like Hudson Clark in my mind. He's not the best corner, but he's been a great safety for us when he's been able to line up out there. Very, very smart player. There's a reason he was an academic All-American. He sees the game well. He's always in the correct position. I think if you play him at the safety, it makes up for a little bit of the lack of speed. He's not a slow guy by any stretch, but when you're playing against, SEC wide receivers like Malik Neighbors from last year, somebody that can absolutely just take the top off of a defense, you don't want him out there on his own on the sides. You want him in the middle where he can kind of play downhill. Great run stopper, very underrated run stopper in that safety position. So, man, I'm excited about this cornerback room. Defensive back room, I guess would be the more correct terminology. But I think we've got even deeper compared to last year. And in my opinion, last year, this was one of the areas I thought was our strength, or compared to at least some of the other facets of the game. I thought our defensive backs were not a problem last year compared to previous seasons. And I think we've made tremendous strides in recruiting here. And we've got guys coming in, in 2026 and stuff that are going to, have impact on this position room as well. So I think you got to give a big shout out to the coaching staff and the recruiting staff for getting this area corrected, if you will. This was definitely a weak spot for us if you think 2-3 seasons ago. So to be able to talk about a lineup like this and have significant confidence that they're going to be one of the better position groups, that is a tremendous turnaround. You saw it last year. Obviously, that was kind of the big turnaround year, in my opinion, that this group really played well together and I thought had some definite shining moments and big-time impact on games. Kept us in a lot of games, frankly. So I'm very excited about a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I think this coaching staff did a really great job when you look at the guys they had to go out and replace after last season. I think you lost Dwight McLaughlin to the NFL draft, who, had a big play the other night in a preseason game with the Vikings. And then you lost Al Walcott, you lost Snacks Johnson, which was a surprise to me, but you lose those three guys that played a lot of snaps last year. And so, you have Jalen Braxton coming back, you have Jaden Johnson coming back, guys that played in a lot of the games down the stretch. And then you bring in a lot of experience. You have Nico Slaughter, came in from Tennessee, played in 10 games, had a big game against the high competition in Georgia. You bring in, Marquise Robinson, a senior. You have Miguel Mitchell, a junior, coming in from Florida that played in the SEC ball. Other guys, Anthony Switzer coming in from Utah State, redshirt senior. So you've got a great combination. I think we've said this before about some of the other, position groups. I feel like you have a great combination of not only depth, but youth and experience. You've got a lot of talented young kids in this room, but you also got guys like that I just named that have been there and have been around for a minute and can bring a lot of experience to these young kids. And like you said, Selman Bridges, I think he's a guy that Travis Williams really likes. He's mentioned that he's got the length, he's got the speed. It's just how quickly can he adjust to the speed of the college game. Yeah. Like you said, mentally adjust to the speed, because it's going to be a lot faster than what he saw in high school. So you've got the physical attributes. So how quickly can you get your mind up to speed? And, I can't wait to see what Jalen Braxton does with a year off season. He looked great last year, really came into his own late in the game and late in the season. I remember he had a big play in that Florida win, where he had that pick six for early in that game. That was our lone SEC win there. So a lot of these guys have the chance to take a step forward. Like you mentioned, Jaheim Singletary, a guy that the talent is there. He was hit and miss last year. Hopefully this season, I think they said he's came in, really put things together, and should be another key piece for Arkansas. But, I'll be interested to see, like you said, how often some of these guys line up and where, with the defense we run, you've got the hog position, which some of these guys can kind of fluctuate into. You have Hudson Clark, like you said, playing that safety spot where you can keep things in front of him and not have potential plays happening behind him. That way he can, be put in the best possible position to succeed, if you will.
Yeah, and I know he's a little undersized to be like a linebacker, but I feel like Hudson Clark has the brain of a linebacker. He's just a little undersized to play that position. But you line him up kind of right behind those linebackers in that safety role, and you can bring him up and blitz with him. You can have him in run protections, have him cheat up on plays that if you've watched some film, you understand what's coming. You can really call a flexible defense with a guy like Hudson Clark that has the IQ that he does and the recognition that he does. He's had his fair share of busted coverages and things in years past, but I did think last year was a significantly improved year for him. I'm excited to see if he can, build on that even more this year. And with a little bit of the depth that's around him, put him in the position to succeed more often than not. And get him off the field on certain plays where, you need a little bit more man-to-man coverage, things of that nature. I think you have the depth to be a little bit more flexible than we have in years past. I feel like we had a pretty deep team last year as well. But to me, with some of the transfers we brought in, Anthony Switzer's a prime example. Played at Utah State, definitely not SEC competition, but it's significant D1 level competition, and he had 85 tackles. That's a lot. Especially from a defensive back, that's a lot of tackles. That's not a linebacker where, those guys chew up tackles left and right and they get up in the hundreds mark. That's a significant amount of tackles for a defensive back. So somebody like that very likely also has a good IQ, is in the right place at the right time, those types of things. If you have an entire roster of those types of guys, you can really play good football. You can spice up your positions. You can disguise a lot of coverages a little bit better than you can if the guys don't really understand their assignments as well. So I harp on this every week, and I'm going to do it again. The mental side of the ball, especially on defense, is so critical to not make mistakes, not be out of position. No matter what the play is, you gotta have that discipline to stay in your position, especially if it's zone. You have to have that discipline to stay with your guy. If it's man, there's a lot of different things that come into the game from a mental standpoint, not just your speed and your athleticism, your wingspan and how high you can jump. Those are all great things. If you're making mental mistakes and letting guys get behind you in coverages, or you're switching to the wrong guy if somebody's going in motion or something like that, those are the things that cost you games. It's not the 50-50 balls that, okay, that receiver was just bigger than I was. I was in position and played good defense, but he just beat me. That's going to happen, and that's okay. As long as you're in position and it wasn't a busted coverage, it wasn't a blown play, things of that nature, you take those losses if you have to, but as long as you know that you weren't the sole reason that there was an easy score or something like that, that's how you stay in games. And in my opinion, that was one of the reasons why we did stay in some of the games last year. There wasn't just a ton of critical mental mistakes, and there wasn't near as many blown coverages and busted plays and position the defects, if you will, on the defensive side of the ball compared to 2-3 years ago. So I think there's been a lot of improvement made. I think the defensive scheming that we run compared to, like a 3 lineman set, like we were running back with,
Odom.
Yeah, Barry Odom. I feel like that is built to compete more in the SEC on a week-in, week-out basis. I know we had some success that one year with Odom's defense just because we caught a lot of quarterbacks by surprise when we were dropping as many guys in coverage as we were, and we were able to get a lot of – you think of the Ole Miss game.
Dropping 8 for the most part.
We were dropping 8, and I think we had 6 interceptions that game, something like that. But that only happened that one year. The next year, everybody understood what we were running, and they understood how to beat us, and it definitely cost us. I don't think it translates to SEC competition all the time. So being able to mix up your looks a little bit and being able to get more pressure on the quarterbacks really is critical, because you're going up against SEC wide receivers that if a quarterback has time in the pocket, he's going to find one of those guys. They're going to get open. Doesn't matter how good your corners are. Some of these wide receivers are going to get open no matter what. Even if they aren't open, those 50-50 balls, there's some generational talents that we're going to play against week in, week out. That they're going to get theirs, and you have to be okay with that and minimize the mistake plays where you can. That way, those plays that those guys do are gonna make, no matter what you do, they don't hurt you as bad because you didn't give up 2 other touchdowns that were freebies, if you will. So, minimizing the mistakes, in my opinion, is definitely key number one. And I think this lineup has a lot of potential to put themselves in the best position to achieve that. So I'm very excited about this defensive backs room. You and I talked about it plenty, but I think they're sneaky good. They're probably not talked about enough. Everybody talks about, how deep we are at wide receiver with all the returners that we've got coming back, a lot of the talent that we've got coming in there. I think this defensive back room is a pretty good mirror image of that wide receiver room, if you will. Lost a handful of guys, but we reloaded a few of them. And then a couple of the guys that we have coming back are big play type guys. So I'm excited about it for sure.
Yeah, kind of to add to your point where you're talking about the mental aspect. I think that's what you kind of saw a perfect example of that is, not to pick on him in any way, but Jaheim Singletary, he is a guy that I think he came in before last season, either late spring or right at the summer. And so, earlier in the season, you saw a few of those mental mistakes, but kind of as he was able to get more familiarized with the scheme week in and week out towards the latter half of the season, you saw much improved play from him not as many of those mental mistakes with whether it be a busted play or, letting a guy get behind him and not switching when you should have type of issues.
Yeah, I think he's a prime example of somebody that did play better later in the season once he was a little bit more familiar with T. Will's defensive schemes, the positions, the other guys he was playing with. I think that's a lot of it too, is there's going to be a healthy balance of guys that have good chemistry with each other. And then if they're able to, kind of share that and build some good chemistry with these incoming freshmen and transfers, that is the correct recipe, I guess would be the right way of putting it, on how you build a good team in today's day and age. Even outside of football, we've talked about it in basketball, in baseball, the whole shebang. It seems like you have to have a couple guys return that can help kind of lead your culture. They understand the expectations from a culture standpoint and the expectations from the coaches. They can lead by example and get some of these guys that are coming in with fresh faces up to speed quicker than the coaches can alone. I think we've seen that even on like the offensive line, obviously quarterback room. There's a lot of guys that I think are leading by example and will have this team in position quicker than it could have been if we were just having to replace almost everyone, for example. So, we've talked about it a lot. There's a lot of question marks on how this year is going to go, but I do think this defensive backs room is one of the smaller question marks on how well they play together, what they're going to be capable of doing, and the impact that they're going to be able to provide this team, and keep us in games, maybe steal us a couple games. If they're able to really get in a quarterback's head, have him seeing ghosts, and have somebody throw several picks, this unit right here could be a big factor in the Oklahoma State game, where they've got a quarterback that's in his 19th year of college football, it seems like. Are they able to, get in his head where he's not able to be as confident slinging the ball? It's early in the year, so, that he might still have a little bit of rust on him, have some early season jitters. Can they force a lot of turnovers on him? That'll be a big factor in my mind on if you're able to go into Stillwater and steal that game. So this unit could be very, very critical on wins and losses for us.
Yeah, I agree there. I think it's one of those things that, like you said, it'll be interesting to see early in the season what these guys can do. But I'm also interested to see how much we see snaps from the Metcalf boys. There's been a lot of hype for those guys coming in. Their background. Who they're related to. One of the top wide receivers in the NFL. Hopefully, that the NFL and those genes transfer over into, these two defensive backs here. And, I think there's a lot of excitement out there for that. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see. But, that kind of wraps up as, we've gotten to go through each position group here over the last few weeks and month. And, this time next week, we will be seeing Arkansas football being played, whether you're watching on TV or you're at the game in Little Rock. I mean, it's going to be a fun season. I'm interested to see what it turns out. Do we kind of hit that mark of getting back on track after a weird season last year and how it went, or kind of do struggles continue? Hopefully, it's the first of those two. But we'll be back most likely on Wednesday of next week as we do our breakdown of the game with UAPB. And then we'll get back to our regular Thursday shows the following week, since we will be back to the normal Saturday schedule for games. So as we kind of get ready to wrap up here, the women's soccer end up in a tie with Michigan State. So no wins or losses there, but held our own against a fellow top 10 team. So you got that's early season success for this soccer team to do that. And especially near the end of the game, they were playing with only 10 players. I wasn't able to hear what they were talking about, but I think it was due to some card issues of getting some yellows and one red card. So being down a player and still not allowing a game-winning goal was pretty great for this team. And as far as upcoming events, we have soccer coming back home to play Northwestern State on Sunday at 1 p.m. As we mentioned before, football will be playing UAPB at 6:30 at War Memorial Stadium on August the 29th, as well as Arkansas soccer playing Gonzaga at home at 7 p.m. on the 29th as well. So we're getting to that time of period where we're going to have several events coming up. I know volleyball had an exhibition game tonight, so volleyball is about to get kicked off as well. So we're going to have a lot going on for you guys. But as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that little bell to let you know when we go live and post new content for you guys. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. And we thank you for listening to today's episode of Hogs on the Hill. And like we said, we will be back next week, most likely on Wednesday. We'll let you guys know to do a preview and breakdown of the matchup against UAPB to open up the 2024 football season. But with that, we'll see you guys next time.